The DCEU has copped some fair criticism, but perhaps lost in all the noise has been the good of the films. Today we're taking a look at what I think are some really intriguing character arcs for two of the big guns in the DCEU, Superman and Batman. In 2013, Warner Bros. Released Man of Steel, which presented us with a different look at the classic Superman origin story. Throughout the film, Clark learns of his Kryptonian heritage and the reasons behind his mysterious powers. When the Kryptonians, led by General Zod, come to Earth looking for Kal-El, Clark weighs up whether he should come forward, and whether the world is even ready for someone with his abilities. As the Kryptonians begin their attack, Clark is thrust into becoming a hero, and the fate of the world rests upon his shoulders. One of the things I really like about this version of the character is how they present Superman as a character with room to grow and learn. The film received some criticism for the amount of damage caused throughout the fight, and how Superman should do all he can to save as many lives as possible. But, as this is an origin story, I like the fact that Clark isn't the perfect Superman right off the bat. Man of Steel gives us a version of the character that has room to grow. Rather than be the perfect hero, he makes mistakes that he'll have to learn from later. Which brings us to Batman v Superman. This time around, the fallout from Superman's battle with Zod is clear, with the city in rebuild and a monument put up to celebrate Superman's heroism, and to remember the lives of those lost. But not everyone is quite so in love with the Man of Steel. There are many who protest against him, and the debate rages on about whether he should be kept in check by the government in case he ever decides to follow in the footsteps of the other Kryptonians. This is actually one of the more interesting explorations of the Superman character on the big screen. If someone like Superman ever did exist, this is how the world would react, and it's interesting to see a story where not everyone bows down before Superman. At the end of BVS, Superman sacrifices himself to save the world from Doomsday, and for the first time we see them coming together to mourn their hero. Throughout Suicide Squad and the start of Justice League, we see the world coming to the realization that Superman meant nothing but good to them, and the effects of a world without Superman are being felt. When Superman makes his return in Justice League, it's a much more traditional take on the character. Instead of self-doubt, he's filled with hope and optimism. And while most people will say that this was a knee-jerk reaction from Warner Bros. To the bad reception of Superman from BVS, and to some extent it probably was, I'd argue that this story arc, or something like it, was always part of Zack Snyder's original vision. The version of Batman we see in Batman v Superman is unlike any previous big screen incarnation of The Dark Knight. This film presents Bruce Wayne as a middle-aged man who's been Batman for over 20 years. He's war-hardened, ruthless, and he's clearly been through some shit. A glimpse at the suit of Robin implies that this version of Bruce Wayne has experienced the death of Jason Todd. Throughout the film we see Batman being extremely reckless. This is a version of the character that breaks his one rule, and doesn't mind killing. Many fans took offense to this, but I think it's another interesting look into the psyche of the Dark Knight.
He has the power to wipe out the entire human race, and if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty. And we have to destroy him.
But he is not our enemy.
Not today. 20 years in Gotham, Alfred. We've seen what promises are worth. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way?
Bruce reminds Alfred of the number of good guys gone bad in the 20 years he's been fighting crime in Gotham. This and the death of Jason Todd are just hints at the amount of torture Bruce has had to endure. It's naive to think that Batman would fight crime for 20 years, going up against criminals like the Joker and experience all he's experienced, and still refuse to kill. I believe this makes the character much more relatable and human. No matter how good his intentions, he can only be pushed so far before he snaps. Throughout the film, Batman is seen to have severe paranoia and tunnel vision when it comes to Superman. He's convinced himself that Superman is evil and must be stopped. Again, this fits entirely with this take on the character. After everything he's been through, all the good guys gone bad, he can't afford to trust anyone. When the two heroes finally come to blows and Batman has Superman at his mercy, the word Martha, and Lois telling him that's Clark's mother's name, is the only thing that breaks Bruce out of his rage. The realization that Clark had human parents allows Bruce to see Superman as a hero just like he once was. In the process, Bruce remembers his own mother, the death of his parents, and why he became Batman in the first place, while also realizing he's become the exact type of person he set out to stop. In Justice League, we're presented with a Bruce Wayne who's on the road to redemption. He's realised what he's become and is attempting to right the wrongs. Honestly, I feel like there was so much more to this story that we didn't see in Justice League, which is unfortunate. One really intriguing character point for Batman in this film is the idea being teased that Bruce is willing to sacrifice himself. He's clearly not right mentally, and either because of the sacrifice Superman made or because of his own guilt, he feels that if he had to give his life to save the world, he would. And don't be surprised if this idea is brought up again should Affleck decide to leave the role behind. The Snyder trilogy of DCEU films may not be the greatest trilogy ever made, but there are some really interesting character arcs for its two major players. I do wonder whether knowing some DC history going in enables fans to fill in the blanks that perhaps the average viewer may not. It's pretty clear that the setup of the DCEU was rushed, and you can't help but feel that maybe these great ideas and character arcs were wasted on these early films, rather than being given the room to breathe and grow in a more slow and steady approach to a shared universe. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you liked the video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, share it around with your friends, subscribe, and follow us at AUKS Social on Twitter.